It's Storytelling Live. Welcome back for another week of crazy antics and and stories. I lit a candle here tonight. I was going to do this all by candlelight and like with the candle like in front of my face, and then we would see, like the flashlight, shining up. Um, that didn't work because flame and beards, don't quite mix. But guess what I have for you? You're gonna like this. Just a minute. This smile keeps getting stuck. Yeah, but let's see. There we go. So tonight's a blue moon. So that's kind of a blue moon, isn't it? But it's the blue earth. It's the blue ocean. welcome, welcome back to Storytelling Live. Uh, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm stuttering right now because I don't know how to start. I don't know how to start talking about it. Number one, we lost another great one, right? And I hate. I maybe he felt like he was, not. Maybe he felt typecast as James Bond, but I mean, I really enjoyed that role, and that's when I decided I wanted to learn how to. I wanted to stay in a fancy hotel and order, room service. I remembered there was this one call, and I think the movie might have been Doctor No. I'm not sure. Um, but he orders breakfast, room service, and he says, uh, uh, he'd like coffee, black, uh, figs, black figs, plain yogurt. He says it funny. And I think he just wanted some orange juice too. He just wanted figs and plain yogurt. What a badass, right? Um, he will forever be Zardoz in my heart, and thoroughly enjoyed that man. He was awesome. Of course, he did other roles. He had other roles, and he was great in all of them. Everything. He had a great time in Hollywood. Some people don't have a great time in Hollywood, but Finding Forrester. Love it, Mike. Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you, Susan. Hi, Susan. I'm so glad you're out there. Um, I'm trying not to get into it, but anyway, I won't get into it. So, uh, I am trying to figure out where I wanted to start. Basically, I'm fed up with like people are losing their head over just about nothing. Um, England, Germany, France, Belgium shut down again. Mandatory quarantine. Can't leave your house for the next month unless you're just running quickly out with like written permission or some such to go get your groceries and go back home. I don't know. How do you catch something that's airborne? I mean, how do you stop something that is caught airborne? It's bad. And I learned that we've been at this for 9 months now. I've been here with you. You guys have been here with me for 9 months. So we have a COVID baby together, full term. We're waiting for delivery. And I don't know how much longer. we're going to be doing this, how much longer we're going to be having our bizarre time. But during the bizarre time, and during the great times, and during the sad times, we must keep our head. And tonight's story is about losing your head. And I have like some interesting background information on, yeah, France shut down. What's happening, Billy? Dude, you're cool, man. I remember meeting you a long time ago in Los Angeles, man. And it was a definite pleasure to meet you, bro. You played some music. I read some verses. So I'm glad you're here with us, bro. Yeah, France is shut down. Mm. So, number one, creature comforts. As I said in the adverts, I'd like you to get yourself a hot chocolate or some wonderful beverage that you enjoy. I'd like you to perhaps maybe light a candle and roast a little schmellow over it, right? Can you do that? Can you? I'm sure you can just roast a marshmallow over. Put four candles together and just roast yourself some. Hey, Frederica, what's happening? Oh, and let's have some chocolate, Veronica. Thank you. Let's have some chocolate. Let's just try to figure out what we love and do it and take the time to do it. Okay? Don't hurt anybody else. This is the thing. This is why people are losing their heads because, hey, Cesar, ¿cómo estás? Amigo. Why are you still awake, my friend, my dear friend, Cesar? Yeah, it's Toussaint. In France, they call it Toussaint. In Mexico and Latino cultures, they call it Todos Santos, and then they call it Dias de los Muertos. Dias, because it's a number of days of when they say the veil is thin, and tonight the veil is thinnest. And if you need to communicate with the people of your past, your ancestors, tonight is the night to do it and to honor them. And if you've lost people to COVID, I'm very, very, very sorry. I'm very sorry. When it happens to you or to your family, then you understand the gravity of the situation. If it happens, if you are scared by death, it still has happened to you, and you understand the gravity of the situation. Um, uh, mm, uh, mm, I have some Day of the Dead marigolds, paper marigolds that a friend of mine made years ago. I was gonna put them up. I like them where they're at. I know where they're at. I'm just telling you that they're here. And any case, um, I wanted to say that people are losing their heads because mainly they're holding worlds of potentialities in their heads. To carry these potentialities is toxic. And so, like, and it's not even a matter of like, if I do this and that, then this and that'll happen. It ain't even that. It's like, if I do this and that, and those people over there do this and that, you don't even know those people over there. And you don't even know if they're planning this and that. You get me? It's like it's you're extrapolating on imaginary extrapolation, and that needs to be a little bit reduced, please, to the fanatics out there. Please, come on. Nothing has happened. Nothing has actually happened. You know, there's time to de-escalate. Yeah, bro. I hear you. That is the real thing. True, true, true that. So, um, cut that war in your mind. Everybody's thinking about, ooh, there's gonna be a race war. There's gonna be a civil war. We're gonna be at war with, what was it? Like Democrats, the liberals versus the conservatives. war in the North versus the South. It's going to be like war in the United States versus Mexico. Let's invade Mexico. No, let's not invade anyone. Leave people alone. Tend to your own. This is disease time. Disease time should train you for any time. Please take care of yourself at any time or disease time. Please find the little things that please you. Yes? And share your love with your family, and with your friends, and practice tolerance. It's exactly the lessons of the Christian population were taught for Christmas time. And honor that now. Now is the time for that. So these, people want a zombie war too. The planet's for a zombie war. What? Get lost, man. Zombies, I'm sorry, I'm here to say that zombies are not real. They never will be real. It'll never happen. Never. I'm sorry. If you heard it here first, I'm sorry. I'm just a guy reading stories, but I will tell you that there will be no such thing as zombies for you. The one thing I haven't heard about is like like a war against, like a class war, right? Where there's a groundswell of people who say, you guys have been too rich for too long, profiting off of us, and we're not getting enough, right? There's not a class war. And why is that? Why are we not concerned about our what we can earn in a day, and who is earning? A person starts up a company, a CEO, and they earn like 20 zillion times more than the people who are actually creating the product. But that was their whole design in the first place, right? So like, come on. uh, but nobody's talking about a class war. The best way to fight a class war is to vote for the people who represent your class. I might be speaking too softly for you. I hope you all can hear me. I just want to be mellow, share mellow, flow mellow. Okay? What else have I got for you? Let me see here. This is cool stuff, man. Did the color of my face change? It's a white page. I'll try to keep track of what y'all are saying in the meantime. But let me tell you about Mr. Washington Irving, because guess what? He saw, he might have seen war, which he did see because he was born in 1783, so he saw 1812. When was the War of 1812? That's the trick question, right? Right? Are you guys comfortable? Get comfortable. Relax. Sit down, turn the lights down low, listen to the sound of my voice, and let's escape once more into the sweet blanket fort that we share every week. Every week, now that we are down, tied down in these circumstances. Let's just be kind to one another tonight. Let's practice that. Be kind to ourselves. Of course, if you've been listening to Storytelling Live for a while, you know that one of my friends is not well. He's still not well. I've tried to step back because it was making me cry during the day and making me worry while I sleep. We are about high. Yeah, don't lose your head, baby. Oh, I hear you, man. I hear you. You just have to, you don't have to move. Hey, Dragon Billy, you don't have to move full speed, honey. You could just move at your best pace, at your best possible pace. And you must be patient with yourself. COVID Shut down, understood. You must go at your own wholesome pace. You are, and your power are most at stake. You are most important right now. You must preserve your power. Do not spend yourself, man. Build yourself. Inform yourself. Work well, work hard, and work smart. And you'll do it. I know you can. And Veronica, we are going deep into our blanket fort, my sweet. Washington Irving was born on April 3, 1783, and he died in 1859. So he was an American short story writer, essayist, biographer, historian, diplomat, early 19th century. So 1783 American, right? Oh, baby. You can protect yourself from zombies. I get you. But there are things to do in voodoo uh, about that. But we can't talk about it now. If you want, private message me. We could go further. I have some. I am privy to a few protection spells and stuff like that. If you're in need, okay, we could talk about that, but not right yet. We're gonna get down. We're gonna go deep, dive deep into the Washington Irving. So the Irving family comes from settled in Manhattan. I can't figure out where they're from really quickly, but Washington Irving was born the same week that New York City residents learned of the British ceasefire, which ended the American Revolution. So, 1776, they wrote, right, the Constitution and that sort of thing. Yeah, bro, you're cool, and I got you, okay? We'll talk soon. But, let me, excuse me. Let me see here. So, he was a little baby. He didn't really see the end of the American Revolution that he was born in that time, man. It's cool. It's a very hinge point in our American history when he was born. Real war is not pretty. Real war is very, very bad, and very ugly, and very negative, and just disgusting. And it breaks people. It breaks and kills people, but it breaks their hearts, and it breaks people's resolve. War is not fun. It's not a romantic thing. It's not a like, hey, I'm gonna get myself a tricky weapon and I'm gonna shoot it at other human beings and they'll fall dead and I'll sleep well at night after I have killed a number of people. No, you do not sleep well when you have killed a number of people. Your life changes as soon as you even maim one person. Your life starts to go down. It's real. You shoot a hole in another person, and that becomes the deflation of your own self and your own life. And it goes, you don't raise up higher. In World War II, it, they had killed lots of killing, and if you don't remember, maybe Vietnam, I don't know if you can think about an actual war. I think that when the actual reality of war has left the zeitgeist, then it resurfaces just as quickly um, as a romantic ideal, uh, until again, once again, the actual uh, brutality rears its ugly head, and we're confronted once more. Let's just be thankful that we don't live in like Syria, where our president would strafe our apartment buildings, right, and blow up entire neighborhoods. That's really bad. That's bad. War's bad. Okay, not good. War, not good. War, no, not good. Hey, Michael. Sorry, I'm lecturing everybody. So whatever. It's just not cool. Not cool. Just make yourself a sweet drink and sit down. And maybe write a stupid story about how you shot someone in the face and they died and you slept really well. Why don't you do that instead, huh? Yeah. God damn. Damn. Why do so many people want that? To do that to other people? Make love, not war, right? Maybe are people not getting enough sex in the world? You know? Come on, man. Quit thinking that sex is a bad thing. Like, just get together. Ugh. Ugh. Yeah. People, the combat, as soon as you raise your voice for an argument, it's lost. The goal, it's the situation has escalated to a point where communication is actually stopped. So try it. Try to get angry and yell at someone and see if they see if that works. Just try to get angry at, and then after that, uh, you know, like the discussion is over, the cooperation is over, the growth has stopped, and um, um, after the success of our World War II, then we voted General Eisenhower to be our president, right? And then he told us, he warned us about the military industrial complex, and we still went ahead and built one. Patriotism, patriotism, altruism, altruism. Thank you, Mike. Okay. So we're talking about war because domestic war, because this is what Washington Irving actually witnessed in his life. And I'll tell you a little bit more about his story right now. And I won't divert again for the rest of the night. Okay? So the Irving family settled in Manhattan and were part of the city's merchant class. Washington was born on April 3, 1783, the same week that New York City residents learned of the British ceasefire, which ended the American Revolution. Irving's mother named him after, of course, George Washington. Irving met his namesake at the age of 6 when George Washington was living in New York after his inauguration as president in 1789. I actually went to George Washington's residence up in Manhattan, and it's beautiful. It's like a time warp. You go there and you can really, they say Washington slept here. He really did, and it looks, in their houses, they look big and ornate, but at the same time, they look small and compact. And people were smaller than, I'm sure Washington was only about 4 foot tall. He must have only been about 4 foot tall. I'm just joking. What do I know? I don't know. Well, George Washington was living in New York after his inauguration as president in 1789. The president blessed young Irving, an encounter that Irving had commemorated in a small watercolor painting which continues to hang in his home. And the Irvings lived at 131 William Street at the time of Washington's birth, but they later moved across the street to 128 William Street. Several of Irving's brothers became active New York merchants. They encouraged his literary aspirations, often supporting him financially as he pursued his writing career. Irving was an uninterested student who preferred adventure stories and drama, and he regularly snuck out of class in the evening to attend the theater. And let me see, there was an outbreak of yellow fever in 1798, and he had to go upriver, which means up into upstate, yeah, New York. So he was in Tarrytown, and he became familiar with the nearby town of Sleepy Hollow at that time when he was about 14, 15, with its Dutch customs. and the wonderful ghost stories that they had in Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow. So he made several other trips up the Hudson as a teenager, including an extended visit to Johnstown, New York, where he passed through the Catskill Mountains, which is the setting for Rip Van Winkle. And of all the scenery of the Hudson, Irving wrote, the Catskill Mountains had the most witching effect on my boyish imagination. Irving initially opposed the War of 1812, like many other merchants, but the British attack on Washington, D.C. in 1814 convinced him to enlist. He served on the staff of Daniel Tompkins, governor of New York and commander of the New York State Militia, but he saw no real action apart from a reconnaissance mission in the Great Lakes region. The war was disastrous for many American merchants, including Irving's family. And so he left for England in 1815 to salvage the family trading company. So, trading company, if you're into trading company, that's a little, yeah, so, trading company means exploitation of brown people for their spices and sugars and stuff. We won't delve into that right now, but we must note that he remained in Europe for the following 17 years. He wrote Rip Van Winkle, 1819, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, 1820, and they both appear in the sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, Gent. So that's not just a little bit like Tristan. What's his name? Oh, not Tristan Zara. No, no, no. I've got the book. It's right here. I can't even read it. I'm spacing. Every time I'm on camera with you guys, I space out. I'm not really thinking. I'm trying. I'm just basically. I'm like half asleep right now. 2 seconds. Shandy, the drink, Shandy, Tristram Shandy. So I mean, that's what it sounds like. So he, Geoffrey Crayon, Tristram Shandy. Okay. So I'm sure he had read Tristram Shandy. So he wrote also many historical works, as well as several histories of 15th century Spain, because he went ahead and moved to Spain, and he apparently lived in the Alhambra, and he was apparently studying Moors, which means Moroccans, baby. And they call they call the Morocco, Tunisia. It's it's on the map. Let me see here. I'm gonna ruin it. It's over here on his cheek. Basically, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. These are the Maghreb countries, and this is where Moors come from. Mm-hmm. Also, Mauritania. But he also wrote about George Washington. He also wrote about the Alhambra itself. And Irving served as an American ambassador to Spain in the 1840s, and apparently he lived at the Alhambra, blah, 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 as I just said. And he wrote a 600-page biography of Muhammad, PBUH, peace be upon him. In his tellings of women, Native Americans, African Americans, even Muhammad, they're all a bit, I would say, cartoonish. So he, I don't know how to say it. Cartoonish. Let's just say cartoonish. So my thoughts are: does he see everything in a kind of a fictionalized manner, or is this his upbringing, his ego, or his intellect speaking, or a combination of them all? Irving was a complex character, and people study him to this day. So I'm going to read a bit of a passage from the Washington Irving Society, and perhaps this might be a rationalization of his characterization of humans. or it might be, well, we'll just see how it comes out. So this is written by Tracy Hoffman, published September 25th, 2018. Quite recent. I picked one, an article that was recent by a person named, man or woman, not sure, Tracy Hoffman. In 1832, after being abroad for 17 years, Irving embarked on a buffalo hunting trip through Oklahoma Territory. He kept a journal during the adventure, and even though he claimed a book was not his intent, he nevertheless published a tour on the prairies, 1835, based on the journey. He died in 1859. Okay, so that's 20 years before his death. Okay, so he kept a journal during the adventure. Some scholars have dismissed Irving as a racist simply based on his stereotypical handling of an African American servant in the legend of Sleepy Hollow, which we're going to hear tonight. And when you consider the others in Sleepy Hollow, the others, right? That's how it's written. The word others is quite operative here. Uh, Such as the Coquette and the Connecticut Yankee, and also understand what a huge impact the theater had on Irving's writing. It's unfair to say he's only singling out a single race or gender or culture. He presented men, women, all races and cultures in unflattering ways, depending on the stock character and or scene he was explaining. Irving's sympathy and perhaps empathy for the plight of Native Americans can also be translated into his views about people in other groups too, it seems to me. These are not my words. This is, again, Tracy Hoffman back in 2018, September 2018. So, stories and descriptions about Native Americans in the sketchbook, Tour on the Prairies, and then his next two histories / biographies, Astoria and Captain Bonneville, give us a better assessment of Irving's picture of the American landscape and contribute to the rich texture of Irving's studies. So, was Irving decidedly a racist? I will not tell you. I will simply place a little flag there. But when we read historical texts, we should include this information as we are learning. That's about it. So I wanted to talk about one last thing before we get into the text. The headless horseman is described as a Hessian. What is a Hessian? Do you know what a Hessian is? You probably do. But for those who don't, I'm going to say that the Hessians were German soldiers who were hired by the British Army in Europe to help them put down America's revolt. Their significance was that they made up a huge part of the British Army. William Howe had an army of 32,000 men, and 30,000 Hessians served in America for the British. Hi, Diana. You are just in time for the actual story. We're just about to get into it. Glad to see you here. According to the historian David Hackett Fisher, about 23% of the Hessians who survived the war remained in America. Other estimates go as high as 40%. A significant portion returned to America after the war with their families. These are German immigrants, ex-soldiers trained for killing. Yes, as the soldiers are. They all are. So it was not such a bad ending, perhaps, for Hessian prisoners. And I don't know what they did with Hessian prisoners in every case, but our friend tonight probably got beheaded, right? by back then, if you were a patriot, you were for the United States, which was a burgeoning country. And today, if you're a patriot, apparently you're right wing. What sense does that make? Everybody is a patriot. We all love our country. We love our country. Okay. Okay. Yeah, baby. Yeah, indeed. So that is my lead in. And if you're not about the story, you can take off now because we're going to dive into the story. And I will not stop. We are listening tonight to the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Imagine if that was my head. That would be cool. I wish I could read with a jack-o'-lantern head tonight. That'd be awesome. The Hessian soldier lost his head, baby. Is that what you're talking about, Diana? Okay. Anyway, ready? And for now, this is our blue moon as well. Even though it's the Earth, it's our blue moon. And I hope you enjoy. And thanks for showing up. If just run and get your drink, man, run and get that cocoa if you don't already have it. And pull the blanket up to your chin. Pet the kitty, pet your doggy, pet your hamster, pet your pets. Pet all your pets. All of them. Every one of them. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves, which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators of Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas. Of course, the Dutch invented Santa Claus, which from St. Nicholas, okay? But I won't go there. We'll talk about him later. There lies a small market town which is generally known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given by the good housewives of the adjacent country from the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. They would tarry, right? Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there's a little valley among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook murmurs through it, and with the occasional whistle of a quail or the tapping of a woodpecker, it's almost the only sound that ever breaks the uniform tranquility. From the listless repose of the place, the sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow. And some say that the place was bewitched during the early days of the Dutch settlement. Others, that an old Indian chief, the wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrick Hudson. Certain it is, the place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of the descendants of the original settlers. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. The dominant spirit that haunts this enchanted region is the apparition of a figure on horseback without a head. It is said to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of the night as if on the wings of the wind. Historians Areli, ¿cómo estás tú? Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Uh, didn't he hold it in his hand? Diana, who's holding what in whose hand? And what? Don't answer me now. Let's talk about it later. So, hurrying along in the gloom of the night as if on the wings of the wind, historians of these parts allege that the body of the trooper, having been buried in the yard of a church at no great distance, the the ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow is owing to his being in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. The spectre is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. Oh, Hamlet held a Banquo in his hand, I think. And Banquo was a jester, and the skull with whom he converses in the graveyard at night is the skull of a comedian. And that's what makes the story especially wonderful. Of course, they're Danish, so who knows what really is afoot. But something is rotten in the state of Denmark. However, it is remarkable that this visionary propensity is not confined to native inhabitants of this little retired Dutch valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time. However wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region, they are sure in a little time to inhale the witching influence of the air and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams, and to see apparitions. In this byplace of nature, there abode, some 30 years since, a worthy wight of the name of Ichabod Crane, a native of Connecticut who tarried in Sleepy Hollow for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was tall and exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms, and legs to hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, and feet that might have served for shovels. His head was small and flat at top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. To see him striding along on a windy day with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield. His schoolhouse. Yes, my dear. Oh, yes. No, you're good. Let's go full screen, Diana. Yes, you're wonderful. You're wonderful. Diana, of course, you're wonderful. His schoolhouse was a low building of one large room, rudely constructed of logs. It stood a rather lonely but pleasant situation just at the foot of a woody hill, with a brook running close by and a formidable birch tree growing at one end of it. From hence the low murmur of his pupils' voices conning over their lessons might be heard on a drowsy summer's day, interrupted now and then by the voice of the master in a tone of menace or command, or by the appalling sound of the birch as he urged some wrong-headed Dutch urchin along the flowery path of knowledge. All this he called doing his duty, and he never inflicted a chastisement without following it by the assurance, so consolatory to the smarting urchin, that he would remember it and thank him for it the longest day he had to live. When school hours were over, Ichabod was even the companion and playmate of the larger boys, and on holiday afternoons would convoy some of the smaller ones home who happened to have pretty sisters or good housewives whose mothers noted for the comforts of the cupboard. Indeed, it behooved him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arising from his school would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda. To help out his maintenance, he was, according to custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at the homes of his pupils a week at a time, thus going the rounds of the neighborhood with all his worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. That this might not be too onerous for his rustic patrons, he assisted the farmers occasionally by helping to make hay, mending the fences, and driving the cows from pasture. He laid aside, too, all the dominant dignity with which he lorded it in the school, and became wonderfully gentle and ingratiating. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest, and he would sit with the child on one knee and rock a cradle with his foot for whole hours together. In addition to his other vocations, he was the singing master of the neighborhood, and picked up many bright shillings by instructing the young folks in psalmody. Thus, by divers little makeshifts, the worthy pedagogue got on tolerably enough, and was thought by all who understood nothing of the labor of headwork to have a wonderfully easy life of it. Thank you, my dear. I'm contemplating taking off my jacket. That's what I was doing, and perhaps I will take off my jacket. It's just constricting, yeah. So, uh, the schoolmaster is generally a man of some importance in the female circle of a rural neighborhood, being considered a kind of idle, gentleman-like personage of vastly superior taste and accomplishments to the rough country swains. How he would figure among the country damsels in the churchyard between services on Sundays, gathering grapes for them from the old vines that overran the surrounding trees, reciting for their amusement all the epitaphs on the tombstones, while the more bashful pumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior elegance and address. He was, moreover, esteemed by the women as a man of great erudition, for he had read several books quite through, and was perfect master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft. His appetite for the marvelous was extraordinary. It was often his delight, after his school was dismissed, to stretch himself on the clover, bordering the little brook, and and there con over Mather's Cotton Mather, direful tales and the gathering dusk. Then, as he wended his way to the farmhouse where he happened to be quartered, every sound of nature, the boding cry of the tree toad, the dreary hooting of the screech owl, fluttered his excited imagination. His only resource on such occasions was to sing psalm tunes, and the good people of Sleepy Hollow were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody floating along the dusky road. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and listen to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins and haunted bridges and haunted houses, and particularly of the headless horseman. But if there was a pleasure in all this while snugly cuddling in chimney corner, it was dearly purchased by the terrors of his subsequent walk homeward. How often did he shrink with curdling awe at some rushing blast howling among the trees of a snowy night, in the idea that it was the galloping Hessian of the hollow. Cotton Mather. Wasn't he wonderful? We love him, don't we? Maybe I should keep my coat on. I don't know. I might put it on later. I'm not sure. I'm not. Am I hot? Am I cold? It was so hot today, actually, in town. Okay, so yeah, Cotton Mather, right? We all know him. And so Ichabod Crane is reading this on the clover, on a bed of clover outside the schoolhouse after school's out. And he's reading the writings of Cotton Mather. I'm not sure. Um, no, I was just thinking of the wrong thing. Paul McCartney Wings, uh, the song Jet. I'm hot, leave it on. Huh? I don't know. Thank you. You're hot, baby. Who's hot here? Um, uh, no, I was thinking of Paul McCartney's tune, the Wings tune. Ah, Mater. You know, uh, you know, we always loved you, Jet. Anyway, I'm just thinking about the song Jet. I wish I could play it for you, but you know what? Facebook would stop me from playing it for you because I'm not licensed. If I if we if I have to play a tune for you, it's going to be a cool one off the latest album. You can get that on iTunes. It's a cool album. It's about $9 or $10 on iTunes, I believe. I can't control the price over there. I can control the prices on Bandcamp. Anyway, let's not get into that. So we're down, deep down into this. So, how often did he shrink with curdling awe at some rushing blast howling among the trees of the snowy night? The idea that it was the galloping Hessian of the hollow. All these, however, were mere phantoms of the dark, right? It's just happening in your goddamn mind, bro. Daylight put men to all these evils. He would have passed a pleasant life of it if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together. And that was a woman. Okay, I would never say that, but Washington Irving just did. Okay, so he said this in what was it, 1820? I love. I we not. We're not gonna. We don't need to give that any more air. Okay, so among the musical disciples who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instruction in psalmody, which is Psalmody. Okay, so singing psalms. Was Katrina Van Tassel, the only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass, a fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. She was, withal, a little of a coquette, as might be perceived in her dress. She wore ornaments of pure yellow gold to set off her charms, and a provokingly short petticoat to display the prettiest foot and ankle in the country round. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart toward women. And it is not to be wondered at that so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially after he had visited her in her paternal mansion. Old Baltus Van Tassel was a perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He seldom, it is true, sent either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm, but within those everything was snug, happy, and abundant. The Van Tassel stronghold was situated on the banks of the Hudson, in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which the Dutch farmers are so fond of nestling. A great elm tree spread its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbled up a spring of the softest and sweetest water. Hard by the farmhouse was a vast barn, every window and crevice of which seemed bursting forth with treasures of the farm. Rows of pigeons were enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Sleek, unwieldy porkers were grunting in the repose and abundance of their pens. A stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in an adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks. Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard. The pedagogue's mouth watered as he looked upon the sumptuous promise of luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured himself every roasting pig running about with an apple in its mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in comfortable pie and tucked in with a coverlet of crust. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all this, and as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands, the rich fields of wheat, rye, buckwheat, and Indian corn, and the orchard, burdened with ruddy fruit, which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into cash, and the money invested in immense tract of wild land and shingle palaces in the wilderness. His busy fancy already presented to him with the blooming Katrina, with a whole family of children mounted on the top of a wagon loaded with the household trumpery, and he beheld himself bestriding a pacing mare with a colt at her heels, setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or the Lord knows where. Talk about castles in the sky, man. This guy was building up all kinds of crazy fantasies. Fantasies upon fantasies about fantasy. But he's not doing anything but standing in the yard and looking at a house. Okay, so he's looking at some animals too. But anyway. Fantasies can drive you nuts. When he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete. It was one of those spacious farmhouses, with high-ridged but low-sloping roofs built in the style handed down from the first Dutch settlers, the projecting eaves forming a piazza along the front. From the piazza, the wondering Ichabod entered the hall, which formed the center of the mansion. Here, rows of resplendent pewter, ranged on a long dresser, dazzled his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool ready to be spun. Ears of Indian corn and strings of dried apples and peaches hung in gay festoons along the walls, and a door left ajar gave him a peep into the best parlor, where the claw-footed chairs and dark mahogany tables shone like mirrors. Mock oranges and conch shells decorated the mantelpiece. Strings of various colored birds' eggs were suspended above it, and a corner cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed immense treasures of old silver and well-mended china. From the moment Ichabod laid his eyes upon these regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end, and his only study was how to win the heart of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. In this enterprise, however, he had to encounter a host of rustic admirers, who kept a watchful and angry eye upon each other, but were ready to fly out in the common cause against any new competitor. Among these, the most formidable was a burly, roaring, roistering blade of the name of Brom Van Brunt. Brom Van Brunt, the hero of the country round, which rang with his feats of strength and hardihood. He was broad-shouldered, with short, curly black hair, and a bluff but not unpleasant countenance, having a mingled air of fun and arrogance, and from his Herculean frame he had received the nickname of Brom Bones. He was famed for great skill in horsemanship. He was foremost at all races and cockfights, and with the ascendancy which bodily strength acquires in rustic life, was the umpire in all disputes. He was always ready for either a fight or a frolic, but had more mischief and good humor than ill will in his composition. He had 3 or 4 boon companions who regarded him as their model, and at the head of whom he scoured the country, attending every scene of feud or merriment for miles around. Sometimes his crew would be heard dashing along past the farmhouses at midnight with a whoop and a halloo, and the old dames would exclaim, "Aye, there goes Brom Bones and his gang." This hero had for some time singled out the blooming Katrina for the object of his uncouth gallantries, and though his amorous toyings were something like the gentle caresses of a bear, yet it was whispered that she did not altogether discourage his hopes. Certain as it is, his advances were signals for rival candidates to retire, insomuch that when his horse was seen tied to Van Tassel's paling on a Sunday night, all other suitors passed by in despair. Right? It's Brom is Biff, and could he write a gorgeous lullaby? Probably not. You know, this guy was a cad. He was a muscly cad. Do you guys remember the Disney representation of this story? Because Brom's there, and he's cool looking. He's got this tousled hair that curls down in the front, and these big broad shoulders and a tiny little ass, yes. Oh. But it's plump in the back end. Yes, yes. mm. The smile, the same corner. I mean, I put like 20 curls of tape, and it refuses to stay stuck. I put so much tape right there. I keep replacing it too. Oh, you think it needs just a fresh piece of tape? No, it does not. I keep putting new tape on it, and it keeps like, come on, baby. Anyway, okay. Ah, but it looks cool, doesn't it? Looks cool. Okay. So if they see his horse out front, all the other suitors for Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, right? Hurricane Katrina. Her name's Katrina. Uh, so all other suitors pass by in despair. My house is infested, I think, by fruit flies. And they are everywhere. Bastards. Anyway. Thanks, Diana. Right on. Let me see here. Lol. Woohoo. Right on. In the middle of the broadcast, now I have you. Everyone here now, you guys are the real audience. You're the real listeners. You're the real people who make this broadcast special for me and for you, perhaps. I'm not sure. If you're enjoying, then it is special. But I want to tell you, I'm hoping that my surgery is not too bad, and I'm looking forward to reading and talking about. I want to talk about. I'm looking forward to reading Sherlock Holmes, and I want to talk about. What's it called? Spiritualism, and Arthur Conan Doyle's bizarre naivete. Even though he was a brilliant man, he was naive in a particular way that made him very special intellect. Um, oh, there's another thing that I didn't even mention at the head of the program. It's just that every Halloween night is also Houdini's night. It is the night when we are supposed to see if Houdini can contact us, or his wife, or his mother, or whoever can contact us from the other realm. And Houdini actually, and the great Randy, who also recently died, Randy, the amazing Randy. I'm not sure if you know who he is. But he was a wonderful magician. I've had this book since I was about 8, and can you see that? It was written by the amazing Randy. Um, Houdini. This is Halloween is Houdini's night, and that's when he's supposed to communicate with us from the beyond. Okay, and your mouth was shut all along, bro. Y'all cool. The amazing Randy and Houdini made it their business to um, stop people who pretended to be uh, mediums and hold seances because, oh man, I've studied this at length and there's a lot to say, and it's really amazing and wonderful. I can't wait to talk to you about spiritualism, the Fox sisters, all the chicanery that did go on. You know about how under a table they would have controls and stuff like that to bring like a trumpet down from the ceiling, and then it would like, then they would like somehow somebody off stage would, make a noise like a trumpet, and people would go, oh, are we being contacted? But there is a way to have a real seance, and the validity of the Fox sisters, also from New York, is highly debatable. And we're going to talk about the Fox sisters' spiritualism, probably not all at once, maybe all at once. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I can do next week. I've got a I'm happy to talk to you. I'm so glad you're here right now. In the middle of the program, you guys are closest to my heart. Thank you for being here. The people who show up at the end or the beginning, they're zipping in and out. Everybody's zipping in and out. But you guys right now, thank you. You're the awesome ones. You're awesome. And you help make this program fun, and we can keep going. I've got I'm going to I've got a COVID test on like Tuesday, and that's election day. I just put my ballot, slip my ballot into the box, into a drop box today. There were people watching it. I felt good about it. And then so Tuesday, COVID test. I got a sequester until surgery Thursday. That means I've got to buy like snacks and stuff for when I come out of the surgery, and I want snacks, man. I don't want to eat meals. I just want snacks. You know what I'm saying? Nap, snack, nap, snack. Right? That's the thing. Whatever's gonna feel good. Watch Netflix. Watch those guys on Facebook digging pools underground. What are they doing, man? They just dig into the dirt, then they dig up a termite mound, and then that becomes the mortar for. Then they plaster the pool, right? And they like. Anyway, what are you guys saying? I'm sorry, what? I lost track. What? No, no, no. Diana, I went to that one with Halloween and paranormal people in LA and it's really cool. So the amazing Randy, right? Yeah. Speedy recovery. It'll be cool, man. I just need sleep and snacks. Yes, my dear Diana, thank you. Come serve me tea and bouillon or whatever. It'll be fine. I just gotta. It won't be like last year. Last year, I didn't know you. Well, I knew you, but things were different. I mean, I was in the same stuff. I was into all this same stuff. It's just I wasn't doing the storytelling line. But last year, I was in bed for like 2 months with a fouled up surgery, and then I had complications, so I needed a second surgery. And then now I need a third surgery to correct some complications. Yeah. Um. Anyway, thank you all for being here right now. Right now, very important. Thank you. Really enjoy you. Um. mm, So we're going to talk a little bit about spiritualism next week, and then after that, we're going into space. Oh, my dear Diana, weed. I have weed ready. The weed is ready. And you know what? They gave me Norco. So I've got some Norco. And you know what? Opiates and weed go together like peanut butter and bananas, baby. It's going to be awesome. Oh, I love that. Yeah, but you know, Ripper's London no longer actually exists. I want to go back into history and see the convoluted streets of Ripper's London. Ripper's London was amazing, and I want to see the real thing one day. I don't know if it's possible. Okay, great, great. So, if this dude's horse was tied in front of Katrina's house, then the other suitors passed by in despair. And such was the formidable rival with whom Ichabod Crane had to contend. Considering all things, a stouter man than he would have shrunk from the competition. Ichabod had, however, a happy mixture of pliability and perseverance in his nature. He was in form and spirit like a supplejack. Though he bent, he never broke. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness. Ichabod therefore made his advances in a quiet and gently insinuating manner. Under cover of his character of singing master, he made frequent visits at the farmhouse, carrying on his suit with the daughter by the side of the spring under the great elm, while Balt Van Tassel sat smoking his evening pipe at one end of the piazza, and his wife plied her spinning wheel at the other. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me, they have always been matters of riddle and admiration. But certain it is that from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, hmm? Ooh, like it, like it. Ooh, nice. Thank you, Veronica. Why are you tagging yourself? I don't get that though. Yes, where the Houdini's estate once was. They had these strange radios that came out weird screams. Okay. But certain it is that from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, the interests of Brom Bones declined. His horse was no longer seen tied at the palings on Sunday, at the pairings on Sunday nights, and a deadly feud gradually arose between him and the schoolmaster of Sleepy Hollow. Brom would fain have carried matters to open warfare, and Ichabod had overheard a boast by Bones that he would double the schoolmaster up and lay him on a shelf of his own schoolhouse, but Ichabod was too wary to give him an opportunity. Brom had no alternative but to play off boorish practical jokes upon his rival. Bones and his gang of rough riders smoked out Ichabod's singing school by stopping up the chimney, broke into the schoolhouse at night, and turned everything topsy-turvy. But what was still more annoying, Brom took opportunities of turning him to ridicule in presence of his mistress, and had a scoundrel dog whom he taught to whine in the most ludicrous manner, and introduced as a rival of Ichabod's to instruct Katrina and Salmody. In this way, matters went on for some time. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in pensive mood, sat enthroned on the lofty stool whence he usually watched all concerns of his little schoolroom. His scholars were all busily intent upon their books, or slyly whispering behind them, with one eye kept upon the master, and a kind of buzzing stillness reigned. It was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a black man, mounted on the back of a ragged colt. He came clattering up the school door with an invitation to Ichabod to attend a merrymaking to be held that evening at Mr. Mynheer Van Tassel's. All was now bustle and hubbub in the lately quiet schoolroom. The scholars were hurried through their lessons without stopping at trifles. Those who were tardy had a smart application now and then in the rear to quicken their speed, and the whole school was turned loose in a full hour before the usual time. The gallant Ichabod now spent at least an extra half hour at his toilet, brushing and furbishing his only suit of rusty black, that he might make his appearance in the true style of a cavalier. He borrowed a horse from the farmer with whom he was staying. The animal was broken down. The animal was a broken-down plough horse that had outlived almost everything but its viciousness. He was gaunt and shaggy, with a hewed neck and a head like a hammer. His rusty mane and tail were tangled and knotted with burrs. One eye had lost its pupil and was glaring and spectral. The other had the gleam of a genuine devil. In his day, he must have had fire and metal, if we may judge from the name he bore of Gunpowder. Now, the horse's name is Gunpowder, yes? Because he's a light gray. And a saggy, soggy horse with a bowed back and a flat head. Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of the saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like a grasshopper's. He carried his whip perpendicularly in his hand like a scepter, and his horse jogged on the motion of his arms, not unlike the flapping of a pair of wings. So he's something like, with his knees up here. That's how he rides the horse. A small wool hat rested nearly on the top of his nose, and the skirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Around him, nature wore that rich and golden livery which we always associate with the idea of abundance. Autumn abundance. As he jogged slowly on his way, his eye ranged with delight over the treasures of jolly autumn. On all sides he beheld vast stores of apples gathered into baskets and barrels for the market, others heaped up in rich piles for the cider press. Farther on he beheld great fields of Indian corn, and the yellow pumpkins lying beneath them, turning up their fair round bellies to the sun. He passed the fragrant buckwheat fields, and as he beheld them, soft anticipations stole over his mind, of dainty slapjacks, well buttered and garnished with honey by the delicate little dimpled hand of Katrina Van Tassel. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of the Elir Van Tassel, which he found thronged with the pride and flower of the adjacent country. Old farmers, a spare leathern-faced race, in homespun coats and breeches, blue stockings, huge shoes, and magnificent pewter buckles. Their brisk, withered little dames, in close crimped caps, long waisted short gowns, homespun petticoats, and gay calico pockets hanging on the outside. Buxom lasses, almost as antiquated in dress as their mothers, excepting where a straw hat, fine ribbon, or perhaps white frock gave symptoms of city innovation. The sons, in short, square-skirted coats with rows of stupendous brass buttons, and their hair generally queued with a eelskin in the fashion of the times, eelskins being esteemed as a potent nourisher and strengthener of the hair. Brom Bones, however, was the hero of the scene, having come to the gather on his favorite steed, Daredevil, a creature like himself, full of mettle and mischief, in which no one but himself could manage. So let's imagine, okay, so maybe this was written in like 1820, but it's definitely the style of the late 18th century. We've got like, they're looking like people from the Revolution, with the big square buckles on their leather shoes and on their hats, and well, they had the tricorn things, right? And the long ponytails, the men, and then the frock jackets and stuff, yeah, with the square tails and stuff. Magnificent. This is I'm really enjoying Washington Irving's description of autumn and the costumes that the people wore, the costumes, the clothing. It's very beautiful. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying this too. It's just really great stuff. Ichabod was a kind and thankful creature whose spirits rose with eating as some men's do with drink. He could not help rolling his large eyes around him on the ample charms of a genuine Dutch country tea table in the sumptuous time of autumn. Such heaped up platters of cakes and crullers of various kinds known only to experienced Dutch housewives, and then there were apple pies and peach pies and pumpkin pies, besides slices of ham and smoked beef, and moreover delectable dishes of preserved plums and peaches and pears and quinces, not to mention broiled shad and roasted chickens, together with bowls of milk and cream, with the motherly teapot sending up its clouds of vapor from the midst. Ichabod chuckled with the possibility that he might one day be lord of all this scene of almost unimaginable luxury and splendor. Then he thought how soon he'd turn his back upon the old schoolhouse and snap his fingers in the face of every cowardly patron. Instant on the fly word choice change. If you read the original text, you will find the N word. I'm not going to include it on this broadcast. And now the sound of the music from the hall summoned to the dance. The musician was an old gray-headed black man who had been the itinerant orchestra of the neighborhood for more than half a century. His instrument was as old and battered as himself. He accompanied every movement of the bow with a motion of the head, bowing almost to the ground and stamping with his foot whenever a fresh couple were to start. Ichabod prided himself upon his dancing as much as upon his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fiber about him was idle, as his loosely hung frame in full motion went clattering about the room. How could the flogger of urchins be otherwise than animated and joyous? The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, and smiling graciously in reply to all his amorous oglings, while Brom Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner. When the dance was at an end, Ichabod was attracted to a knot of the sager folks who, with old Van Tassel, sat smoking at one end of the piazza, gossiping over former times and drawing out long stories about ghosts and apparitions, mourning cries and wailings, seen and heard in the neighborhood. Some mention was made of the woman in white who haunted the dark glen at Raven Rock and was often heard to shriek on winter nights before a storm, having perished there in the snow. The chief part of the stories, however, turned upon the favorite spectre of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, who had been heard several times of late near the bridge that crossed the brook in the woody dell next to the church, and it was said tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. The tale was told of Old Brower, a most heretical disbeliever in ghosts, how he met the horseman returning from his foray into Sleeping Hollow and was obliged to get up behind him, how they galloped over a hill and swamp until they reached the church bridge. There, the horseman suddenly turned into a skeleton, threw Old Brower into the brook, and sprang away over the treetops with a clap of thunder. The story was matched by Brom Bones, who made light of the galloping Hessian as an arrant jockey. He affirmed that on returning one night from a neighboring village he had been overtaken by this midnight trooper, that he had offered to race him for a bowl of punch, and should have won it too. But just as they came to the church bridge, the Hessian bolted and vanished in a flash of fire. The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together their families in their wagons and were heard for some time rattling along over the distant hills, some of the damsels mounted behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hoofs, echoed along the silent woodlands. Ichabod only lingered behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced that he was now on the high road to success. Something, however, I fear me, must have gone wrong, for he sallied forth, after no very great interval, with an air quite desolate and chopfallen. Oh, these women, these women! Was Katrina's encouragement of the poor pedagogue a mere trick to secure her conquest of his rival? Let it suffice to say. So, was Katrina's encouragement of the poor pedagogue all a mere trick to secure her conquest of his rival? Let it suffice to say Ichabod stole forth with the air of one who had been sacking a hen roost, rather than a fair lady's heart. Without looking to the right or left, he went straight to the stable, and with several hearty cuffs and kicks roused his steed, most uncourteously. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travel homeward. Far below, the Tappan Zee spread its dusky waters. In the dead hush of midnight, he could hear the faint barking of a watchdog from the opposite shore. The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky, and driving clouds occasionally hid them from his sight. He had never felt so lonely and dismal. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had ever heard now came crowding upon his recollection. He would, moreover, soon be approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. And just ahead, where a small brook crossed the road, a few rough logs lying side by side served for a bridge. A group of oaks and chestnuts matted thick with wild grapevines threw a cavernous gloom over Ichabod, gave Gunpowder half a score of kicks in his starveling ribs, and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, the perverse old animal only plunged to the opposite side of the road into a thicket of brambles. He came to a stand just by the bridge, with a suddenness that nearly sent his rider sprawling over his head. Just at this moment, in the dark shadow, on the margin of the brook, Ichabod beheld something huge, misshapen, black, and towering. It stirred not, but seemed gathered up in the gloom like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. The hair of the affrighted schoolteacher rose upon his head, but summoning up a show of courage, demanded in stammering accents, "Who are you?" He received no reply. He repeated his demand in a still more agitated voice. "Who are you?" Still there was no answer. Once more he cudgeled the sides of the inflexible Gunpowder, and shutting his eyes broke forth with involuntary fervor into a psalm tune. Just then the shadowy object of alarm put itself in motion, and with a scramble and a bound stood at once in the middle of the road. He appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, and mounted on a black horse of a powerful frame. He kept aloof on one side of the road, jogging along the blind side of old Gunpowder, who had now got over his waywardness. Ichabod quickened his steed in hopes of leaving this midnight companion behind. The stranger, however, quickened his horse to an equal pace. Ichabod pulled up and fell to a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other did the same. His heart began to sink within him. There was something in this stranger's moody silence that was appalling. It was soon fearfully accounted for. On mounting a rising ground, which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. But this horror was still more increased on observing that the stranger's head was carried before him on the pommel of the saddle. Ichabod's terror rose to desperation. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder, hoping to give his companion the slip, but the spectre started full jump with him. Away then they went and dashed, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttered in the air as he stretched his long, lank body over his horse's head in the eagerness of flight. They had now reached that stretch of road which descends into Sleepy Hollow, shaded by trees, for about a quarter of a mile, where it crosses the famous church bridge just before the green knoll on which stands the church. Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, plunged headlong downhill. As yet, his panic had given his unskillful rider an apparent advantage on the chase, but just as soon as he got halfway through the hollow, the girths of the saddle gave way, and Ichabod felt it slip slipping from under him. He had just enough time to save himself by clasping old Gunpowder round the neck when the saddle fell to the earth. He had much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping on one side, sometimes on the other, and sometimes jolted on the high ridge of the horse's backbone, with a violence that he feared would cleave him asunder. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hopes that the church bridge was at hand. He saw the whitewashed walls of the church dimly glaring under the trees beyond. He recollected the place where Brom Bones's ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I can but reach that bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he felt its hot breath. Another convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge and thundered over the resounding planks. He gained the opposite side, and now Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer could vanish according to rule in a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He was tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, old Gunpowder was found without his saddle and with the bridle under his feet, soberly cropping the grass at his master's gate. Ichabod did not make his appearance at breakfast. Dinner hour came, but no Ichabod. The boys assembled at the schoolhouse and strolled idly about the banks of the brook, but no schoolmaster. An inquiry was set on foot, and after diligent investigation they came upon the saddle trampled in the dirt. The tracks of horses' hoofs, deeply dented in the road, were traced to the bridge, beyond which, on the bank of a broad part of the brook, was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it, the shattered pumpkin. The brook was searched, but the body of the schoolmaster was not to be discovered. The mysterious event caused much speculation at the church on the following Sunday. Knots of gazers were collected in the churchyard, at the bridge, and at the spot where the hat and the pumpkin had been found. They shook their heads and came to the conclusion that Ichabod had been carried off by the galloping Hessian. As he was a bachelor and in no one's debt, nobody troubled his head any more about him. It is true, an old farmer who had been down to New York on a visit several years after brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive, that he had only changed his quarters to a distant part of the country, had kept his school, and studied law at the same time, had turned politician, and finally had been made justice of the 10-pound court. Brom Bones, too, who shortly after his rival's disappearance conducted the blooming Katrina to the altar, was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod Crane was related, and always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led some to suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell. The old country wives, however, who are the best judges of these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means. The bridge became more than ever an object of superstitious awe. And that may be the reason why the road has been altered of late years, so as to approach the church by the border of the mill pond. The schoolhouse, being deserted, soon fell to decay, and was reported to be haunted by the ghost of the unfortunate teacher and the plowboy loitering homeward of a still summer evening, has often fancied Ichabod's voice at a distance, chanting a melancholy psalm among the tranquil solitudes of Sleepy Hollow. That's it. That's it, people. You have survived. Oh, our lighting's just a little bit dark these days. I'll have this fixed in no time. Thank you once again for another marvelous week. I had a good time reading that story. There's nothing wrong with Washington Irving's writing. I mean, well, there's plenty wrong with it, right? But I really loved the his description of fall, the autumn, the riches of autumn, the peaches and the plums and the quinces and those, you know, the roasted birds and meats and all that stuff. That's awesome. That's pretty awesome. New York was very much colonized by the Dutch, and of course, New York City was New Amsterdam, and everybody knows that. Anyway, next week will be coming up. Hey, Suzanne, right on. I love it. I'm so happy that you were here. The blue moon, I'm so happy you were here with us. Right? I love it. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone out there who is still watching. Thank you for watching this broadcast. I'll be back next week. You know, so as long as COVID's here, you know, we're gonna be here. So something. I mean, we're gonna have the election, the erection. Think about erections and not elections, okay? I'm thinking that no matter who our president actually ends up being, we will have the personal revolution that we've been needing for all this time. What do I mean by revolution? It's not going to be a revolutionary war, or a civil war, or a race war, or an ideological war, and not even a war of the classes, which is probably something we should actually think about. But we will have an election between now and next week. And I want you to keep your head. And I want you to feel secure in the knowledge that, excuse me, the social adjustments, rather than saying the operative word of revolution, the adjustments and readjustments that we need in our society will probably happen no matter who's the chief. We're hoping we get a good chief, but if our good chief is lame, then it's worse than having a bad chief. Nothing's better than having a bad chief and having a greatly golden upswelling from the grassroots, right? Reagan years saw a lot of great punk rock. There's great punk rock out there happening now. I wish you all great health and great safety, great peace of mind. And I'll be back next week, and hopefully I'll be right here If I'm not feeling hot, then I'll read from my bed, but I will read. Some of our people, some of the people we love are freaking out now. And if they're freaking out on abstract. If you've actually lost your job and lost your home and lost a relative due to COVID, then that's not an abstract. And I won't even touch that. That's a definite, deep, heartfelt matter that's very serious. And we need to respect that. But anyway, I'm looking forward to reading to you next week, and we'll talk about homes and why Holmes didn't care about the planets moving around the sun, but he did care about cigarette ash. What was the 7% solution? What was uh, Doyle's fascination with spiritualism? Have you read his treatise on spiritualism? And what was his fascination with the fairies? And other things. Anything. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very. Oh, hello, all these people. You guys are awesome. Mike, Suzanne, thank you. Bisous à tous. Spiritual evolution is dragon. Billy, that's what I'm saying. Billy, it's going to happen. Doesn't matter who's the chief. And it might even be cooler or more energetic, more energy would come up if we have an asshole in charge, right? So Diana, thank you very much. And then I might read from my bed if I have to. And then the fairies. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you very much. And yes, we need to share of ourselves and share with the people you love right now. And that's no joke. No joke. Anyway, thank you. And, well, maybe you have a point, baby. Dragon. Really? All right. Thank you once again. This show will be up for 3 days until Wednesday. Share it. Share it widely. Um, but tell your friends that it'll close down on Wednesday. Um, at some point, I will offer the archives, probably on YouTube. So as each episode is taken off Facebook, I download it and save it, and we'll have a look at those later and for the future. Maybe we won't have this COVID anymore, and we'll all be running free and meet and hug at the clubs and read poetry together and enjoy one another in the physical realm rather than this digital thing. And baby, that revolution is coming up, and it's real. But it starts in your heart. It doesn't start with a gun. It starts in your heart and in your mind, and you share of yourself, and that's where the revolution starts. Here, in here. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night, and good health, and good wishes. And I'll tell you how I'm feeling next week. You guys, if you're worried, my surgery date is Thursday, and I'm not going to feel like talking, but if you want to, uh, all Wednesday I have to be by myself, sequestered. Um, but if you want to write me, and I will be there, I'll respond as soon as I wake up. Okay? Good night. Good night, all you people. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.